fit, formidable, and fantastic.
One of the key tactics in optimizing your size and strength gains from your gym efforts is to constantly challenge yourself. You need to push boundaries and you need to test limits. You need to seek to improve in each and every session, even if that is just one more rep at your current weight or the same amount of reps with 5 more pounds than ever before. I view the gym like a battleground, and a given training session is part of a war, basically. And I refuse to be defeated, so I go into each workout with a hungry and aggressive attitude. There's an old quote by Einstein that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. This rings very, very true, in my opinion, when it comes to training. You simply cannot train exactly as you had when you first began and expect to continue progressing as you advance. You reap what you sow, and as such, complacency in training will beget complacency in results. A weaker individual will resort to excuses for their lack of progression and results, whereas a stronger individual will seek out ways to circumvent a plateau and diligently finds methods and tools to constantly improve. To constantly challenge themselves. The weaker individual will only see limitations, and that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, my friends. This brings me to a major purpose behind this episode. I wanted to discuss 5 pieces of accessory gym equipment that I train with regularly, and I feel these have enhanced my training in some capacity and ultimately helped me push the envelope for my goals. Now, these are by no means required tools, but I felt they'd be worth recommending to potentially help others take their training up a notch or more, and as they have my own training. Now, I'm sure everyone will have their own opinion of what is the best or what is total shit, and some items I'm leaving off here, and there are others that I simply do not use for one reason or other, like lifting straps, for instance. But with that said, let's get to it, starting with the items that I use the most.
A weight belt.
I use this currently 3 sessions out of 5 per week to add appropriate weight to my pull-ups, chin-ups, and dips. In my opinion, those exercises are integral to not only building size and strength, but also athleticism, due to the dynamic of pushing or pulling your own body against gravity. The weight belt allows me to keep my reps of those exercises within a finite rep range for my goals, as opposed to flying off into endurance mode. For instance, failing within 5 to 8 reps on parallel dips instead of going over 20, even when I might be halfway through a given session and my energy is taking an incremental dive. I use a belt made from reinforced padded nylon, so it's 100% vegan friendly, and it's held up just fine, and I've owned and consistently used it for a couple years now, and I don't think it cost me more than about $20.
The ab will.
What was once sold during late-night infomercials actually turns out to be the best, most challenging goddamned abdominal tool that I have ever used. In fact,
in one study of various abdominal exercises, the rollout and the pike were found via EMG to be the most effective at activating upper and lower rectus abdominis, external and internal obliques, as well as the latissimus dorsi muscles.
So start by rolling out from a kneeling position, and as you get stronger, work your way up to rolling out from a standing position. A few sets of pushing to failure with rollouts, and your core will be screaming in agony. If you've never done these before, you will also likely experience abdoms from hell for a few days. I compare rollouts to like a hybrid of a full range of motion sit-up and a plank. Strengthening with ab wheel rollouts has also transitioned into improving my performance in other activities and arenas, such as the missionary sex position. I'm just saying.
Fat grips.
Another training tool that appears gimmicky at first, but in actuality is both challenging and effective. There are a number of brands that make a similar product to Fat Grips, from Grip Force to Iron Bull, but the end result is the same, basically mimicking fat bar training. You can even do it yourself by wrapping a towel, for instance, around the bar, but the commercial products will likely offer more stability. The standard fat grips add an additional 2 inches to whatever bar or dumbbell you are wrapping them on. I find they take the stress off my joints and place more emphasis on the target muscles, as well as burning the hell out of my forearms and grip. All the way down to my fingers, in fact. To call them merely challenging is an understatement, and anyone who has used these before will probably concur with what I'm saying here. You will need to cut your weight down at first on any given exercise and build back up using the fat grips. Anywhere from a 20 to 60% reduction in weight is to be expected on any given exercise. It is definitely humbling to say the least, but once you build back up with the grips, your strength without the grips, going in raw, will be drastically improved. I own a pair of both the standard and extreme models, and I don't train biceps without them. One piece of advice though, when you first get a pair, don't make the mistake I initially made. Work up gradually the number of exercises and the volume and frequency in which you utilize them. Otherwise, you may hinder recovery, experience debilitating soreness, and negatively impact your overall lifts and workout quality in your sessions. So, in other words, perhaps start by using them with just biceps exercises and deadlifts, and then work up to including rows, etc.
Resistance bands.
Now, something I love about cable machines are the constant tension they provide, especially at the peak contraction point. Free weights and most other machines simply cannot offer this quality of tension, in my opinion. But wouldn't it be nice to be able to overload the biceps, for instance, with heavy barbell curls, while also experiencing that peak tension provided by cable curls? Like a best of both worlds type thing. This is where you enter resistance bands. You can get all types, sizes, and tensions, and while they can be utilized on their own for a good pump,
they can also be secured to barbells to add tension to your free weight lifts, as I demonstrate in these photos doing curls.
But you will need to drop the ego and drop the poundage. You will not be able to lift the same amount with the bands as you do without, perhaps not even close. But as with the fat grips that I previously mentioned, work your way back up with the bands, and in turn, your strength will inevitably improve without them. Furthermore, you will likely notice an improvement in both contractile force and explosiveness, which is also great for athleticism. I own basic GAIAM resistance bands in heavy, medium, and light tensions that have the handles at the end. I also have quality handleless loop-style resistance bands as sold by Elite FTS, which are commonly used in John Meadows' lifting protocols. There are a lot of options out there, and you don't need to spend a hell of a lot either. I do not use these all the time, but I do cycle them into my routine to change things up every now and then. As a side note, my sensei first introduced them to my karate training, specifically pre-tournament back in 2011. This tip might help my fellow martial artists, so I thought I'd throw this out there. What you can do is this. Anchor one end of some resistance bands to a stable object, like a column or a pole or something similar to that. And then hold or wrap the other ends of the bands around your hands. And from there, proceed to punch the focus mitts held by your training partner under the newly added resistance. We do this for 30-second all-out punching bouts, focusing on speed, power, and form under the resistance. And then we'll rest 10 seconds and then repeat that. And we'll do this interval style training for at least 5 total rounds, and then remove the bands and hit the mitts without the added resistance. And due to post-activation potentiation, once the bands come off, you'll notice extreme increases in your explosive speed and power. This is truly intense, and we actually keep a trash can nearby to puke into, which happens often. But the harder you prep, the more ass you might actually end up kicking on game day. This trick also works for kicking. Just attach the bands to your ankles instead of your hands. The takeaway with this is that no matter what you're training for or what your sport is, push yourself, challenge yourself, and actively test your limits every fucking day.
Occlusion bands.
Not too long ago, I did an episode providing instruction for the occlusion training method. It's also known as blood flow restriction training. And I will link that episode in the description below, rather than rehash the nitty-gritty of the how-tos and whys. Suffice it to say, I occlude often enough to warrant the occlusion bands getting a final mention in this list. I find the occlusion training method to be highly challenging, in part due to the intense pain that's involved, as well as effective at promoting both an intense pump and hypertrophy. And there is a growing body of research to back this up, which I also discussed in my occlusion video. But you don't need to buy fancy occlusion bands. Ace bandages or similar wraps can even work. I use a product by BFR Bands that I got on Amazon, which I like since they have convenient little buckles for ease of use. You can just take them on and off really easily without having to have someone help you or assist you in any way. They're also made from polypropylene and are vegan friendly. And there you have it. Again, none of these are requirements, and you can even find and try do-it-yourself workarounds for most. For instance, you can clasp dumbbells between your legs during pull-ups in lieu of a weight belt. Or you can roll out using an exercise ball or a barbell with weights at the end, obviously, to act like wheels, in lieu of an ab wheel. You can also wrap a towel around a barbell to add thickness to it in lieu of fat grips. And like I said, you can use Ace bandages in lieu of commercial occlusion straps. And some gyms may even have some of these on hand, like the ab wheel or fat grips. Certainly resistance bands. I think I've never been to a gym yet where they don't have resistance bands, basically. So just ask, ask the front desk in the gym and see what they have for you and what you can borrow. Whatever the case is, if you give any of these a go, I hope they aid your training as much as they have my own. If anyone has any recommendations that didn't make this list or simply wants to discuss the equipment I've mentioned, please open dialogue in the comments below. Now, before I go, allow me to leave you with a motivational quote by Arnold.
The last 3 or 4 reps is what makes the muscle grow. This area of pain divides the champion from someone else who is not a champion. That's what most people lack. Having the guts to go on and just say they'll go through the pain no matter what happens.
Go and crush it, my friends. I'll see you in the next episode.